I never made a pie until maybe culinary school in like our pastry classes. And I didn't think I would like pastry because pastry is much more rigid and about ratios and math. And so I had the impression I was not going to like pastry, but I loved it. And I didn't really revisit it until I was on maternity leave with my daughter. And I just, you kind of get into a nesting thing, and I just had this weird impulse to like learn how to make pie. And the first pies I made were terrible. And I somehow it just became very interesting to me, and I just somehow came up with this idea, almost like whimsically. I was like, I'm gonna have a pie business, and here we are.
Hey everyone, my name is Tim Moore and I'm the program manager at CoLab, a nonprofit dedicated to supporting entrepreneurship in the greater Chattanooga, Tennessee region. Going into 2020, our team was determined to gather and tell the stories of the entrepreneurs we have worked with through a number of programs and events. Today you are going to hear a conversation with Nguyen, the founder of Mama Crunk Pies. Last year, Christine launched an incredibly successful Kiva campaign through our Kiva program here, led by my teammate Katie Hendricks. Kiva, which you'll hear about in the conversation, is a crowdfunding platform that allows entrepreneurs to raise up to $10,000 via lending from friends, family, the community, and even people around the world. You'll hear about how Christine went from a typical culinary career in the DC area to Chattanooga, how she came about the idea of starting to make pies, and she'll share with you lots of great insight into the challenges of running a food business, as well as insights into Chattanooga's evolving food scene. We hope you enjoy. All right, so Christine, first tell us, what is Mama Crunk's Pies?
It is a business that I started in 2016. Basically just me. And I hadn't been making pies for very long, but I was just really interested in making pies, so I figured I'd sell them. I moved here from DC, where I'd spent like a good amount of years in the food industry, and I thought it would be fun to start a small business just making pies, and now it's kind of evolved into something. I mean, we still obviously, people know us for pies, but we also do catering. We're also kind of in the midst of rebranding to Mama Crunk's Kitchen.
Okay.
So, we're branching out and doing more food with possibly, we're pretty sure we're going to open a storefront at the end of this year, later this year, tentatively speaking. You know how these things go. So.
Yeah. It's part of the rebranding to Mama Crunk's Kitchen for Mama Crunk's Pies. You expanded different kind of foods you're gonna have.
Yeah. So I mean, obviously, I started with pies because it's like a comfort food. I'm really into comfort foods, and that's kind of one of the ultimate comfort foods. And when I started, I kind of played with that in terms of sweet and savory and making those flavors a little bit unexpected and interesting. So we're kind of keeping that with all food. So we would have, I'm really into making, sort of like comfort dishes, diner dishes, but maybe with like an Asian twist to like reflect like my cultural upbringing and that kind of thing. So
can you talk a little bit about that cultural upbringing and like how it's like impacted your food and what you like to make?
So I'm Vietnamese. My parents came here basically in both around 75 after the Vietnam War, and so I was born and raised here in DC, and so you don't really think about it until you get older, just kind of like how your childhood isn't exactly the same as everyone else's, like the foods that you eat. And sometimes I found a big thing that helps me process sort of like just not only my identity, but like an immigrant experience, is reflecting how that comes across in the food that I eat, especially having moved here to the South and not being able to find some of the foods that I would grow up with as readily available. I never grew up, I mean, my mom cooked for me, but she never taught me how to really cook at all. Okay. So that was an interest of mine that was confusing to everyone in my family. But so I had to be, it's only been the past couple of years where I just started to learn how to make Vietnamese dishes. Yeah. And I've done a lot of pop-ups where I've done Vietnamese food, whether that's more of like kind of in a fine dining setting or almost like a Southern fusion sense. But it's really interesting, and it's helped me process a lot of things, I would say.
Yeah. For those who are listening who maybe haven't had much Vietnamese food, and I've unfortunately only had a few dishes, like I've had banh mi and like some of the things like that, but can you tell us about like one of those dishes you really like to make?
Yeah, well, so I think when people who aren't aware of Vietnamese food the national dish, I guess you consider the thing that's most recognizable is pho, which is our noodle soup, and it's just like hours simmered broth, but it's like very heavily aromatic with lots of spices and fresh herbs, and and it's basically like every country's chicken noodle soup has, they have, every culture has that, but it's just particularly like herbaceous and all of that. So that kind of defines Vietnamese food. And I don't make a lot of pho because it's really time consuming, but we used to make like a pho pot pie. So like that kind of thing where I'm kind of incorporating comfort food from another culture into the culture that we're used to here. So I love making stuff like that. I love introducing Vietnamese dishes that people couldn't really get around here as easily. I recently did a dinner where I made like caramelized fish, and like people were like, that doesn't sound particularly appetizing. They were like, what does that mean? But then like they had it, and they were like, oh my God, I could have like bowls and bowls of that. And it's like, yeah, that was like my hamburger and fries as a kid, so that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Okay. You mentioned your mom didn't really teach you to cook. When did you kind of get interested in pursuing a culinary career?
To be honest, it was a lot later than you would expect. I mean, I grew up being pretty interested in food, but it wasn't like all consuming. I liked watching like PBS, like Jack and Julia and that kind of stuff, and my mom would have cookbooks in Chinese that I couldn't even read, but I loved looking at the pictures. But I wanted to be a writer, to be honest. I went to school for that. And then realized I didn't want to teach, and I was afraid of having an inconstant muse, like as writers do. So I kind of thought, well, what's not an inconstant muse? And I was like, hunger. So that's when I decided to go to culinary school. So it was a relatively it wasn't like an all-consuming thing, passion that I had until much later, until I actually got into the industry. And now I live, breathe, and eat, clearly eat, but I just think about food all the time.
So you went to culinary school. Did you go in D.C.? Is that where you went to culinary
school?
I
went to a culinary school right outside D.C. in Arlington, Virginia. And I actually got my first fine dining gig while I was still in culinary school. I was working at the Wolfgang Puck restaurant in D.C. And then, being in the culinary industry is one of the few places it's encouraged for you to bounce around. Or at least, that's how I was brought into it. I've done fine dining, I've done farm to table, and I've done pastry, done, short order line cook. I've done high volume catering, like corporate catering. I was on a food truck making crepes for a while. I've seen different things. It's all been pretty cool and edifying, I guess.
So you grew up in the D.C. area, went to culinary school there, got a lot of culinary experience. What kind of prompted the move to Chattanooga? And then, yeah.
Okay, yeah. That's also a question I get a lot. My husband and I were both born and raised in Northern Virginia. I always tell this story. It's cute because Northern Virginia and D.C. at large the metro area is huge, but both I, and my daughter were all born in the same hospital, which sounds quaint, but it's a pretty big city, so it's like we had been there for a while. So we were ready to kind of, see other scenery. And my husband is actually in tech. So it's funny. I like to, he likes to tell people, oh, we moved here for like the outdoors and stuff. I was like, you moved here for the internet. So we moved here for the internet, and but also, just we came to visit some friends who had moved here about a year earlier. Again, I was on maternity leave, and we just, thought it was a really, cute, charming town with a lot of potential, and we also just loved like the cost of living. So yeah, I think we were just ready to be somewhere that was a little less saturated than DC. And we love it, like there's obviously, when you, like there's things that you love and maybe not love about a place, it's home, that kind of thing, where you actively want to see things improve in the place that you're living, that you're home. So that's kind of how we feel about Chattanooga now. Usually when you go to culinary school, most people say like you go into that for two reasons, and that's either you want to be an executive chef or you want to own your own business. And I never really wanted to be an executive chef. I have thoughts on like the whole hierarchy of the kitchen and kitchen culture in general. Mm-hmm. So yeah, obviously it's always been sort of, in my head, it was considered a pipe dream, but I wanted to start my own business. So yeah, I feel like moving here gave me the opportunity to do that.
How'd you land on pies specifically to start with?
It's really strange. I don't remember my thought process right now, but I do know that when I never really grew up, like we don't grow up, like Vietnamese people don't eat a lot of desserts, or like at least baked goods. And so I never made a pie until maybe culinary school in like our pastry classes. And I didn't think I would like pastry because pastry is much more rigid and about ratios and math. And so I had the impression I was not going to like pastry, but I loved it. And I didn't really revisit it until I was on maternity leave with my daughter. And I just, you kind of get into a nesting thing. And I just had this weird impulse to like learn how to make pie. And the first pies I made were terrible. And somehow it just became very interesting to me. And I just somehow came up with this idea almost like whimsically. I was like, I'm going to have a pie business. And here we are. So I just kind of was like, here's something. But, at the same time, I think it was always kind of like a niche stepping stone. Because even when I was in culinary school, I always wanted to have like a diner or like a sort of just a cafe that was sort of, not casual, between casual and a little bit more fun than that, I suppose. So
you wanted something approachable for people.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Even though I appreciate fine dining experience, it's just not what I am interested in doing every day. So yeah. Okay.
Yeah. By the way, what's the kind of meaning or inspiration behind the name Mama Crunks?
Yeah, this is the question I get.
you
100%. Yeah, 100%.
You knew it was coming.
It just started out as a nickname. Oddly enough, it had nothing to do with food. I think I used to work at Tower Records, and I got the nickname DJ Crunkstein or whatever, and it got shortened to Crunk. And then, I just, during college, I was always like that person who would be making food. Like I would throw parties, and literally it would just to feed people, and I would never leave the kitchen. Or if somebody was like hungover from like a party, the next day I would make them some food. So even in culinary school, when we had to come up with like our capstone project or like our restaurant concept, it was something called Mama Crunks. It was essentially what I'm trying to do now. So
it's come full circle.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's great. So you moved here and you were kind of thinking about, okay, I could go the kind of route of becoming executive chef, but you didn't want to do that. Mm-hmm. And then the other direction was to start your own business. Uh-huh. So
what did that look like?
What did that look like? When you decided you wanted to, make pies, what were kind of those first steps you took to actually getting started?
Well, it was a combination of like making a lot of pie and seeing sort of fine-tuning that recipe. And that really didn't ever stop until like a year into the business. I feel like I actually properly mastered how to make a pie, which is kind of crazy. But I just went through the normal routes of just research and starting really small. I started baking in my kitchen and selling at the Chattanooga market. So like cottage industry kind of thing. And, but I took the next step. I mean, I got linked up with like the TSBDC, like that's in the incubator. And they've been like, I still talk to my business counselor there. They're like a really great resource. So that kind of helped me go from, just like a little person, just, selling jams and jellies and pies and stuff at the Chattanooga market to thinking about, okay, now let's approach people for wholesale. And now let's think about, all the different other things that comes with growing a business and scalability and stuff like that. And it's kind of funny because at the very beginning, I hated almost all of it. I hated all parts of the business except making the pies. And now it's like I still make pies, but I have, employees and stuff. And so it's like, that's usually like the one thing I do the least.
And to back up just a second, when you mentioned the Chattanooga market, I've seen a lot of food and beverage companies locally get their start at the Chattanooga market. Hoff Sauce started the market, and now they're selling nationally. What kind of experience did you have with working at the Chattanooga market? Did it kind of give you an idea of what people liked and didn't like?
For pies, it was kind of hard because it was like, it's summer, we have all butter crusts, we're sitting out there for 8 hours. It kind of got messy. So it wasn't ideal for us, but it was a really great start because, people will be like, oh, I've seen you here. I saw you at the market. And so it does definitely give businesses sort of like a little bit of a jump start, or even to, to let you assess, do you really want to do this? Because, I remember when I was making stuff, it would take me, because it was just me, it would take me in my 300-foot galley kitchen all week to make food just for the market, because I would be just like rotating pies in and out of my tiny fridge and stuff like that. So, and I had, one eye that worked on my stove. So you just have to like kind of determine whether you can embrace the chaos of what starting a business looks like. And the problems might change, but like they all the chaos doesn't really change. So yeah, I think that starting at the market was really beneficial in a lot of ways. And
You had a Kiva campaign. What was that? 2 years ago? Last year?
That was last year, I think. That was sort of like maybe in the fall of 2019. It was sort of on the tail end of when we moved out of St. Elmo and we were moving into this new commercial space. It was kind of to sort of cover some of those costs and just kind of help us out with that next step, so we could kind of regroup and figure out what we were doing. And it was great. I think the people at Kiva said like it was like the fastest whatever fundraiser they had done, and to that I can only thank like the friends and because I had a lot of friends even back home in DC contribute, and so I'm just really grateful that I have a lot of people supporting me on my side, and Kiva themselves. Because I think it was like they told me, oh, you have this much amount of time, like this first week to get your first however many lenders, and then after that we're going to open it, whatever, on a broader scale, and that's when we have to, you have to make the loan amount. And I think I want to say in like less than a week the entire loan amount was covered. So I was like, okay, cool. That's awesome. So yeah, that was a really cool experience.
I think locally, you and Kalina with Bitter Bottle.
Oh, yeah.
Two of the fastest ones.
Kalina's great.
Yeah.
Kalina makes a great product, and she's just got an awesome personality. So yeah, that makes sense that hers was like also really quick.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it definitely validates what you're doing, right? You already had probably a community of supporters who were going to your pop-ups and enjoying your products. So I think that just people were generally very excited to see you get to the next step.
Yeah, and that's something that I've been really proud about, is being able to grow a brand when we never really have, we've never really had a solid brick and mortar, or and we've, I haven't really paid anyone to do marketing. I've been just sort of building a brand on blind intuition, and it's really cool to see this kind of response to it. So it makes me excited and hopeful that, you know, when we do have our cafe and retail storefront, like, it'll be successful and be supported.
Yeah.
So,
would you recommend a Kiva crowdfunding sort of loan experience to other entrepreneurs?
For sure. I think beyond, you know, obviously the financial advantages of it, it is a really great social media. It's a great social media campaign, and especially with how quickly people latched on to at least mine. There's just the excitement that you know surrounded that was, you know, it just got people really, even if people couldn't donate, it just got them excited and involved, and, you know, they're sharing it all over the place. And I just think people love being able to see tangible benefits and, you know, of their trying to assist the community, and I think that's a really good way to do it. So,
are you familiar with the Proof incubator that's opening up?
Yeah.
When you were starting out, do you feel like that would have been a valuable resource for you?
I do think that places like Proof, and I know that, you know, at Market South they have an R&D kitchen. I think they're extremely important, not just for me, but for just any food business. Because, I mean, the one thing that's holding back a lot of these line cooks that are super creative in kitchens is just the know-how of how to have a business, and yeah, just being able to have guidance, mentorship, financial assistance in a way, like in a structured way. So, I mean, I feel like I've been hearing about these food incubators even before I moved to Chattanooga, and then when I first moved here, there was a lot of talk, you know, regarding food incubators, because the costs of opening a brick and mortar are just, you know, a lot of people like to say that it's a lot of hard work, and it is, but a lot of it has to do with just knowing where to find money. So and a lot of that is, if you never get your product in front of people, there's not even an opportunity to see that money because investors won't ever taste it. So having incubators like this where investors can come and say, oh my gosh, this is an amazing concept, I mean, it's invaluable. And I think it will make it a lot easier to have a robust culinary scene in general.
So what can the community do to support you and founders like you?
The number one thing that I hear about Chattanooga, and especially in regards to the food scene, is I feel like there's a number of people who are like, it's growing and it's exciting, and there's a number of people who feel like it's not growing fast enough, because, you know, for all of the pop-up dinners and the restaurant incubators, people still, you know, and that's okay, they'll still go to the chain restaurants. And I feel like a lot of that is, you know, maybe a lack of being adventurous. And so I know that when I do open my storefront and my restaurant and cafe, that's something that I'm really about, you know, just getting people to try something they haven't tried before, considering foods in a different way. And the only way that you can, you know, support that is to actually eat it and like educate yourself and try different things. And most of all, just like support the local businesses that are doing some things more experimental or off the beaten path. So I wouldn't even say just support me. I would say support a more adventurous culinary scene in Chattanooga.
For those looking to launch a business in the food industry, what is one piece of advice you would give them?
Keep a good close circle. Don't take yourself too seriously, and just, you know, don't feel like you have to sprint through it. Like, do your research, do your homework, do your market research, and really decide whether you like just, because, you know, when I went into culinary school, everyone, the first like ring of fire was like, do you want to work on the line or do you just like to cook at home? And they're very distinguishing things that differentiate the two. And then I feel like the second ring of fire is, do you want to just cook on the line or do you want to do a business? Because owning a food business, I mean, actual cooking is one of the smallest parts of it. I mean, I guess it depends on how you design it, but one of the smaller parts of it. And you have to do a lot of networking and, researching and understanding financials. And when I started this, I had no interest and I was actually terrified of it until, when I started, I just kind of I rushed to entrust that to other people when I really should have taken the time, and I ended up having to really just learn that for myself. So I would just say that, it sounds weird, but just, take a deep breath and just take your time and learn everything you can learn all-encompassingly and holistically about food business. And then, see if it's for you.
All right, everyone, thank you for listening. We hope you will continue following Christine on her journey with Mama Crunk Pies. You can follow Mama Crunk Pies on social media, attend one of their pop-ups, and support Christine when she opens a cafe space, hopefully by the end of this year. To learn more about Kiva, please visit colab.co/Kiva. You can go to our site, fill out our interest form, and my teammate Katie will answer all the questions you have about the program. We also discussed the Proof Bar and Food Incubator. I'm proud to say that Proof is a new partner of CoLab, and they have great things in the works to support food and beverage companies in our region. Their location on East MLK Boulevard is opening this month, and we hope you will go and check out what they have to offer. Finally, if you are looking to start a business or grow your current business, regardless of industry, please come talk to myself or one of my teammates at CoLab to see how we can help you. You can schedule a meeting with one of us at colab.co/wayfinding. Thank you, and we hope to share more of these stories with you soon.